Yes, Thomas, it is going to be recorded. And that is starting right about now. There we go. Well, good morning, everybody. It is just a few minutes past 9 a.m. Central Time, and this is the governance and security track for our MN365 Fall Workshop Day. And this session here is our introduction to customizing your Power Platform, Power Platform Center of Excellence Starter Kit by Haniel and Mauricio. And as you see there on video, and just a few other notes. Always our event, we ask for the community to help always drive awareness to these events because we put these on for the community. We don't have cost here, like to join these events, as you are all aware today. Some announcements to go over. Meeting is recorded, of course, as I've kind of stated. Ask that if you are not speaking or not having your hand raised or responding to a question, please mute yourself. If you have questions, comments, raise your hand, throw them in the meeting chat. I will be monitoring chat in case there are questions or anything that I can answer. Otherwise, I'll bring them up to the speakers at a appropriate time. If you want live captioning, it is available. Go ahead and turn that on. And then at the end of the session, we will be giving away a $25 gift card. And that's usually decided by participation. So ask questions, respond to any comments from the speakers, and I grab names and we randomize it. At the end of the day, we will have a grand prize that's selected from our survey. And so at the end of your event or at the end of the event today, I'll ask that, or as a user group, we ask, please go to our survey, fill it out. That's how we get our information for what to present on, who to pick as speakers, feedback to make these events better. Our sponsors for today that are helping us put on this event are here, a number of them, which is very, very much appreciated. And then our survey, mn365.org/survey. Keep the link simple. And yeah, I can hand that over to you two.
Perfect. Let me know when you can see our screen.
I can see that.
Awesome. All right, so good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending where you're coming from. So as you mentioned, we're going to be covering today an introduction to customizing your Power Platform Center of Excellence Starter Kit. Bit of a mouthful. Just by means of introductions, my name is Haniel Croitorul. I'm Associate Director for Protiviti based in Toronto, Canada. I act as an enterprise architect. I lead the Power Platform activities pretty much globally. So I get to see really what a lot of companies are doing and some of the struggles that they're facing or challenges that they want to overcome. Gives me a lot of breadth and really opportunity to focus on that. My general approach, I have a passion for simplifying things and automating. Some people will argue that I'm just lazy, and that's why I need automation in my life. 6-time Microsoft MVP. I speak a lot. Also published a book on Agile Office 365. And you have my contact information at the bottom. I'm going to be sharing that also at the end in case you want to keep in touch. And I always like to continue the conversation after these sessions. Mauricio.
Awesome. Great to be here. Thank you, Haniel, for having me. And I'm a cloud solution architect at Microsoft. And Power Platform is my passion. My sole work at Microsoft is to push Power Platform forward. And thanks to our partners and other Power Platform enthusiasts like myself, Power Platform is really picking up. So yeah, and I really want to help the community to achieve all the requirements and really leverage Power Platform to its fullest. So
awesome. And if I could say, rookie speaker, first time. So
yes.
Welcome to the club and congratulations. And
thank you.
It's going to be fun.
Yeah.
All right, so what are we going to cover today? We're going to start by just providing a bit of an overview on what the Power Platform is, the different components, how they're used. We'll talk about governance a little bit, right? Because that's what the Center of Excellence is. It's a tool that helps you govern the Power Platform. Why do we even need to worry about governance? What's the big deal? We'll actually show you the Center of Excellence, give you a very, very quick overview of some of the key components to consider if you're just getting into it. And then Mauricio is going to take you through a nice demo that shows you how you can take the starter kit and then extend it to your specific needs in your organization. All right, so let's do a very quick overview of the Power Platform. So it is essentially built out of 10 key components. To take you through, we have the Power Apps. Those are forms that can be interacted by the user. You can bring data into them, review the data, act on the data, and that is the entry point into the Power Platform. You can build model-driven or mobile apps. You can build ones, what I call Canvas, where you have a lot more flexibility and freedom. And they can be on a mobile device instead of Teams, instead of a browser. So really lots of flexibility. Power Automate, that is your workhorse. That's what does all the heavy lifting. There are workflows that can be either run directly in the cloud, or you can build what are called robotic process automations or RPAs that would mimic user interactions. Think of replacing the hands on a keyboard and a mouse. Power BI is a visualization tool that allows you to understand the meaning behind your data. And you can bring together and create a mashup of different data sources and data points, and really ask a lot of questions like using natural language understanding to say, okay, what's the weather like in Minnesota 5 years ago? If the data is available, Power BI can understand that it can actually give you those answers. Power Virtual Agent, those are chatbots that can be stood up within minutes by just pointing to a website that has the information, and then you can further extend them by using Power Automate in the backend to extract information and make it much more interactive. Power Pages, that is essentially a way for you to build. It's related to the Power Apps, which is more for internal users. The Power Pages is meant for external users to provide essentially web pages that are either for anonymous consumption or for users to log in and participate or act on the different data points. And then one layer below that, we have data connectors. So there's over 500 connectors available today to connect to whether it's Microsoft or non-Microsoft services, cloud-based and on-prem, that allows you to then really kind of optimize your business processes. So you're not limited to just Microsoft. And in the past, you used to have to build a lot of web connections, and there was a lot of customizations required. Today, a lot of companies are realizing that by offering these connectors, they're actually providing a lot more value to the users. AI Builder allows you an additional level of sophistication. So rather than just doing data entry and basic processing of data, it allows you to add models. For example, scanning a business card or receipt, it can actually extract key values or information and store it in the system. You can use optical recognition to say, is it an apple or is it a can of Coke that I'm looking at, and understand what it means. And based on that, rather than a user having to do the data entry, the applications can actually do that for you. Dataverse, which is something that Mauricio is going to talk a lot about, that's going to be at the heart of the Power Platform. That is where you're storing and managing a lot of the data. You don't have to, but if you're looking for a database, this is the place you want to be looking at when you're working with the Power Platform. And then Power FX, that essentially is a language that allows you to build Excel-like functions to manipulate your data in Power Apps, in Power Automate. And then the last one is managed environments. I don't know if you want to touch on those.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you can see here, we have a lot of tools that make business developers' life easier, right? So we also want to make the administrator's life easier. So that's the genesis of managed environments, to supply the administrators with certain tools to make their life easier when they're trying to manage both the information, access, and the creation of Power Platform assets within environments. So we'll talk about it a little bit later, but managed environments doesn't really suppress or really remove the importance of the CoE. Between managed environments and the CoE, there's a lot of synergy that you will see in the coming months. And really, both tools are something that are much better together. Mm-hmm. So I do invite everyone to start playing around with managed environments, but don't forget that the CoE will remain as important as it is right now.
Awesome. Looking forward to try those. All right, so we just touched on the CoE on managed environments, helping administrator to manage. So when we start talking about management, we often talk about governance. And recently I did a survey out on LinkedIn, and I said, what percentage of companies are actively managing their Power Platform? And typically in organizations, the groups or individuals who would be managing such a tool would be either IT, sometimes business, or usually not business, but maybe a combination of business and IT working together as a unified governance group. What was a bit shocked was that nearly 30% of companies out there are actually not actively governing the Power Platform. To them, it's just another tool like Word or Excel, where you basically turn it on and you let your users use it. It may sound easy on IT side to say just, we'll kind of wash their hands off it, but there's certain risks associated with it. Because what happens is Power Platform allows you to automate and simplify what a user can do manually. So it doesn't necessarily give the user more permissions, it just makes their life easier. So imagine having a user who's building some sort of a workflow that would take all of the attachments that come through an email and they extract it from the email and put it into OneDrive. Well, what if that workflow had a small bug in it, and rather than extracting the attachments, it's actually deleting the attachments? And now imagine that the user is going to go and share that workflow, that awesome workflow, with a whole bunch of other people in the organization. You all of a sudden have this big data loss on your hands that is happening inadvertently, and it's not that anybody has broken any permissions or tried to circumvent the way that they work. They're just trying to make it easier. And so by putting in governance, you're actually allowing yourself to mitigate risk and reduce the risk of what is being done in the environment.
Correct, and we cannot really overstate the importance of having proper governance, because your environments, many of you may have experienced it already, but it can balloon up, like the number of apps and flows. Like we've seen customers with like thousands of flows already, and the problem is that 600 of those flows are turned off. So how do you know if you have to remove them or they're necessary? So it can get really complicated.
Right. Yes, you can get duplication. You can get people using different types of connectors that they shouldn't, where they're mixing corporate data with non-corporate data, social media. So really the governance allows you to put some guardrails and not prevent users from using the Power Platform, but make sure that they're doing it in such a way that conforms to the organizational standards. Now, in terms of governance, there are 6 key pillars that we typically would look at. The first one is having the governing body, and that is, I think, the most critical one. Because you can have all tools available to you, but if there's not somebody there who's actively reviewing and defining and assessing the needs of the Power Platform and how it's being used, then it's just another tool. Then is licensing. Licensing is a very, very big topic on its own. Many organizations are struggling with it just because there are many options available, and you really have to understand the fine print and the conditions to know what is the optimal licensing for you, so you're not buying too many licenses or too few licenses or the wrong type of licenses. Security, right? So I just touched on data loss as one, but it's really important to understand who's accessing your applications or your workflows, where they're being accessed from, how they're being used. Is there some sort of a mix of connections that you don't want? So there's a lot that goes into the security element. For example, devices. Is somebody accessing it from a non-corporate device? Maybe that's a red flag. Things you want to think about. And so those kind of red flags are then where you do your monitoring. And this is where the Power Platform Center of Excellence excels. It is a monitoring tool that lets you take a deep dive into everything Power Platform. Lets you understand what is being used, who's using it, how they're using it, how much of it is being used. Are people not following the right guidance? How do you actually build a community of users who are going to be using it more and in better ways? And then related to monitoring, we have alerting. So whereas monitoring is something that you actively need to do, And alerting is a passive activity where there is something in the background that is just watching for certain events to happen, and it is going to inform you or it's going to act on it. For example, if you don't want to allow sharing of workflows, you may not necessarily be able to prevent it, but what you can do is you can set up an alert to say, hey, somebody has just shared a workflow with another coworker, go and remove the share, and then notify the user and admins to say, hey, sorry, but you're not allowed to do that.
Right, and also, like, again, to know when something is not being used, like a flow hasn't been triggered in 90 days, it may give you some pause, and maybe you would like to revisit or follow up with the owner of the flow to make sure that that your resources are being allocated correctly.
Right. Yep. And then for the application lifecycle management.
Right. So this is a big topic, right? Like, that's great. We have your developers all set up. They've created an app, but okay, so how do we surface that app or those flows to the end users? Okay. So you have to have a proper application lifecycle management in the sense that you need to have like a place where you can develop, break things down if you need to. Then you have your environments where you do your proper testing. And finally, your production environments. Now, our platform is very powerful in the sense that with classical development, there's many times where all those environments are completely different from each other. But here in Power Platform, we can have like a consistency between all three phases of the project. The only thing you need to do is know how to transpose all those assets correctly from one place to another.
Right. Awesome. All right, let's do a very quick overview of what the CoE entails, and then we'll jump into some demos. So the Center of Excellence Starter Kit is essentially broken down into three key components. We have the monitoring, which is what I talked about a few minutes ago, that gives you the insights into what is being used and how it's being used. The second facet is govern. That's where you can put restrictions on what users can and cannot do, and maybe limit the way that they are actually using certain elements. And the third one is nurture. This is where really you're trying to educate and you're trying to let users learn how to do things the better way. Grow the community of your citizen developers, and give them opportunities, right? If there's some sort of great ideas that they have, you don't want to discourage them from actually doing it. On the contrary, you want them to be involved in adopting it.
That's so valuable, because never underestimate the use of having and identifying and empowering your champions, because these are the people in your organizations that are going to knowledge share. They're going to take over some of the responsibilities from you about showing the platform around and really teaching other users to make the best of Power Platform. So when you do this and you use the CoE to identify those champions, it's going to be much easier for you to really leverage them in your organization and to really use that knowledge that is being created in your organization for your own good. So.
Right. Yeah. So those are the three core components that come with it. In addition to that, so we already touched on the ignition backlog, right, where you want people to actually get them to promote ideas and to submit ideas. The ALM Accelerator, I don't know if you want to touch on that one.
Absolutely. So you will see that Power Platform already has like a very great integration with CI/CD systems like GitHub and Azure DevOps.
Yeah.
So in order to really use these tools together, you do need to have like certain expertise, right? Like YAML expertise, pipelines, etc. And many of your business developers won't have that. Okay. So how do you, when you have like 50 or 100 or 150 apps that are moving in your organization, how do you allow your makers to really take charge of their application lifecycle management? Well, the solution was the ALM Accelerator. Okay, so the LLM Accelerator brings all the goodness of Azure DevOps and Power Platform together in a very user-friendly package, let's say. So we won't see it that much this time, but I do recommend everyone to take a look at it and really use it to really make your workloads lighter, right?
Right. Maybe that'll be our next session together.
Yeah.
On Accelerator.
That's a
Two more packages. So theming, where it just allows you to add some basic branding onto the Power Platform Center of Excellence to make it match your organizational theme. And then the Creator Kit, which is essentially a package of different UI components that are ready to be used. Because let's face it, many of us are developers who are not necessarily good designers of UI. So the Creator Kit is essentially a collection of components that help us get there. It gives us some of that packaging already of options. Now, I said this before, I'm going to say it again. The Power Platform Center of Excellence Starter Kit has a very rich set of tools, but without the proper governing structure in place, that's all that it is. It's just a tool that may never be used. So you want to make sure that you are in fact defining who is going to make up that governing team in your organization, okay? They're going to have to determine how things are going to be built, etc. And keep in mind, it's called a starter kit. What does it mean? It means that you can start using it. You may never choose to change it, and that's totally fine. But it's not a one-size-fits-all. Some organizations may have some additional needs where they need to build something, which Mauricio is going to show you. Other organizations may say, you know what, we're not going to build chatbots. And so the chatbot functionality may not be relevant, but it's there for you. That's why it's defined as a starter kit. New versions are coming out all the time. So while you may not want to upgrade every month, you do want to keep in mind that if you wait for too long, it may become a bit more complex for you to do such an upgrade.
yes, and we will talk about that.
Yeah.
A little later.
Yeah. Okay. A couple of links if you want to start downloading it, and again, we'll share those towards the end of the presentation. You do have to keep in mind that you need some basic licensing, Power Automate per user and Power Up license just to get those workflows going and to access the Dataverse. If there's more questions about the licensing towards the end, we can stay on and answer those.
And I would just like to take 1 second to acknowledge everyone that is posting their questions on the chat. We will get to them. They're great questions, so keep them coming. Really put us to work.
Yes. All right. So let's quickly jump over and just do a super fast demo of the Center of Excellence. And I typically like to start, there's a Power BI dashboard. And I find that this is a really good way for you. This is the monitoring component. Although it says monitor, govern, and nurture, this is where you can see the data. You cannot act on it. You cannot make any changes, but it allows you to see what is happening inside of your Power Platform environment. So let's just look at a few examples. If I look at Power Apps, for example, immediately it brings me a list of all the different Power Apps, who are the key makers, how many apps that they've built, information about the total numbers, the kind of connections that are being used, something similar for Power Automate, environments, right? We talked about managed environments coming out, but often there's question, well, how many environments do we have? Well, minimum you're going to have one environment, which is going to be your default. But then as people start building more environments, you can see the purple one here, which is the default. You're going to have production environments, which are in yellow. You're going to have developer environments, which every developer can have one. And that's where they should be doing their development, their testing, sandboxes, which are great for doing a POC or testing out a new solution before you put it to production. And then there's also teams environments, which are in the darker blue. And you can look at those ones, right? Because anybody, if it's permitted, everybody can start within a team to actually go and create an environment, create Power Apps, workflows, bots, etc. You can look at your makers. Who are the key makers? Where are they located? How much are they building? Connections, right? That's another one. So what connectors are being used? And this may bring up a red light to say, you may see that there's a connector let's say LinkedIn or Facebook or Twitter that is being used, and you can say, hold on a second, I don't want this one to be used. Okay, now I have to go and do something. I have to go into the into the DLP policies and disable it or move it into non-business to block users from actually using it. I'm not going to go into more detail here, but I just wanted to give you just a really, really quick example of what kind of information you can get from the Center of Excellence, right? You can even do like a risk assessment and view the information based on what has been captured in some of the other components. And then we have the admin control center, and that has a number of applications that you can use for, again, for managing the center, the Power Platform. So we have things like an app catalog. So imagine that just like the Windows apps or Apple App Store or Google App Store, you can see the list of apps that have been approved by the organization to be showing up in the app catalog. And so, like Mauricio was saying before, you may find companies where you find all these workflows and apps that are being created, and there may be some duplication. So rather than telling people go and build something, the first step should be go and check the App Store. Maybe it's already available. Maybe you don't have to build something new. So that's where this kind of a tool becomes really useful. We have the innovation backlog again, which allows you to add ideas. But there's a couple that I think a lot of organizations struggle with, and I want to point on them. One of them is the setting flow permissions. So what happens is you may have a lot of workflows that are being built, but then what happens is you may find that some maker leaves the organization, and all of the workflows, and once that account is deleted, they're orphans. They don't have an owner. They're going to stop working. Or even if the account is still there, IT may say, okay, that person used to have a premium license that costs money. The person's not there anymore. I'm going to remove the license from that user. So that is effectively breaking some of your processes. So having this application to review the permissions, it can actually allow you to quickly go into orphaned, and you can view, in this case, we don't have any, but you'll be able to view any of your orphaned applications. So that is a really, really important one, and you have the same thing for set app permissions. And then another one that I want to call out is the DLP Editor. So we talked about security a few times already, where you don't want to be necessarily mixing business connectors with non-business connectors. The idea behind that is you're trying to minimize any potential data loss. And so we can look at some of the policies. If I take the this one here, the Outlook policy, and I can say if I want to roll out this new policy, which basically takes Outlook and it makes it a business connector, which means it's for business data, and I put everything else as non-business. And that also includes my SharePoint in this particular example. You can see SharePoint is here, so I have business and non-business mixed together. Well, what happens if I roll out this policy? Will there be any impact? And so if I look at it, it shows me all the different connections. But then if I do an impact analysis, right here, it will show me that there's two flows that have Outlook and SharePoint mixed together. Those workflows will immediately stop working the moment that I roll out this policy into the environment where those workflows exist. So again, the Center of Excellence allows you to view these type of things before you put them into production, because what you don't want to do is say, roll out the policy and then have a whole bunch of users scream at you for, hey, you've just broken my process. And I think, Mauricio, you probably want to talk about the Power Platform admin view.
Yes, there's actually just two things that I'd like to add to what you said.
Sure.
Number one, I would be a little bit remiss not saying this, but there's also some very nice changes to DLP policies that have just come out since Ignite. You may not see it right now on the DLP editor. That is like limiting certain actions for certain connectors, like for example, SQL Server.
Right.
You can now decide in an environment if you want to limit the type of actions, like for example, delete or edit. So also like some high risk components like HTTP calls and Azure AD HTTP calls, you can actually now limit the endpoints that you want your users to be able to connect to. So for example, before it had to be completely open to any calls around the internet, but right. Now you can limit those connectors to only be able to access, for example, Azure, your internal Azure endpoints.
Mm-hmm.
when you create abstract functions. Now, the other thing I wanted to quickly mention is that for DLP, although flows could break, power-ups are not going to break immediately if you change the DLP policy, but they are going to break once you edit.
Yeah, once you try to republish.
Exactly. Once you try to republish, like those apps are going to fail. So so tools like this are really helpful.
Yeah.
Not to break things. Awesome. So thank you so much. I will quickly mention there's also this tool, like kind of like one of your main day-to-day tools with the CoE is the administration view. So here we have like a couple of nice functionality. We can see some of the things that Haniel had mentioned about seeing the connectors, like where are they used. You can see them here. Like if we go to Power Apps and it's loading, and maybe can we go to any? Thank you. I'll just. So you can, if you want a little bit more of a granular look around like what's going on with the certain apps, you can see it here. Haniel mentioned about, okay, so you can choose which apps go to the app catalog. Well, you can do it right from here, right, in app catalog. There's also like feature, which is also part of the app catalog. And these are like, let's say the top apps that you want to surface for everyone. You can just set them up as feature. There's also other important things here, and that is the quarantine app. So what is quarantine? You may have heard this before, but when you don't want to delete an app and you don't want to go in and change all the permissions because you don't want people to use it until you understand it a little better or you feel that there's something wrong with it, that's what quarantining is about. So if you quarantine an app, what's going to happen is that your app will be essentially blocked from use, and anyone trying to launch it is going to get a message to contact their administrator. Okay. And this doesn't really change the permissions or anything. It's just temporarily blocking it. So it's a very useful tool for you if you really feel that there's like a risky app and you just want to stop use for it. If you go to, can we go to related, please? Like the tab that says related. Yeah, there you go. There's also a place that you can see some good information that you can see here, like for example, connection references. So probably for this one, maybe we won't see anything, but any connectors or that you have within the app or the flow would appear here. Now, finally, if we go to connectors, I also don't want to go through each and every one. But if there's like a specific connector that you're curious about how many people are using it, is if you go to filter by keyword, can we just, you can just filter. That's right. Oh, you can close that one. But in filter by keyword, right, yeah, there you go. If you put HTTP, for example, we should get like and could we open please the HTTP connector, the first one? Yeah. I just want to show that you can get like a view of like all the apps and the flows that are using it. And this is, again, could be very, very useful for you because HTTP connectors, Azure AD HTTP connectors could be riskier. Right? Now, I think that's what I wanted to show about this one.
And a lot of the information that we're seeing here, Mauricio, correct me if I'm wrong, is not information that exists within the flow or within the app. It's actually data that is being collected and managed by the Center of Excellence, right? So it does the inventory nightly, brings information, but then this is almost like a governing layer on top of each of the app and workflow and other component of the platform to see how it's being managed.
Yeah, that's totally correct. And we are going to see it a little bit later on the presentation about how is the CoE getting all that information, right, and that taking that inventory really.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, let me switch back to the presentation. Okay, and Mauricio, I'll hand over to you to start the demo.
Thank you so much. So Before we go into the demo, there are a couple of things that I would like to show you. And that is explaining to you, I would like to explain to you how the CoE is really layered out, and maybe how you can actually go in and make your changes, or more importantly, where to make the changes, because it can get a little bit overwhelming. So when you're customizing the CoE and actually just working with Power Platform, there's some very key concepts that you need to understand. The first one is solutions. Now, solutions is the mechanism in which Power Platform groups certain assets like Power Apps, flows, AI models, environment variables, etc., and encapsulates it in a way that you can export it and then import it into different environments. Now, when you export a solution, you can export it in two ways. Like, you can create what is called a managed solution or an unmanaged solution. Like a managed solution, think of it as you create a lockdown part of your assets, okay? Nobody can really edit them on other environments. When you install, for example, the CoE on your organization, the solution is a managed solution. That means that you can't change it directly. Now, there's also the unmanaged solution. The unmanaged solution is the solution that you can change, like that you are actively modifying and changing. In order to modify a managed an asset that is on a managed solution, you have to surface it up on an unmanaged solution, and then you can make changes. Now, the other concept that is critical is layering, solution layering. What that means is that when you create a managed solution, it creates like a baseline for your application or for your assets. The moment that you create another solution, a managed solution, it will go on top of it. That means that it's the latest solution is the changes that you're actually seeing. There are a couple of exceptions, which I'll explain in a second. Now, it all goes nicely like that. However, an unmanaged solution, imagine it as the foam over the ocean, right? The unmanaged solution, even if it's older than the new solutions that you add, it's always going to go on top, okay? So you can have like your unmanaged layer, and it's always going to be the layer, let's say, that wins. And why is this important? Because if you have an unmanaged layer and you upgrade the CoE, for example, what users are going to see is actually the unmanaged layer. So that's why we need to be a little bit careful with how we modify the CoE or your solutions in general. Now, as I had mentioned, there are a couple of exceptions, as everything in life. There are certain components, certain assets in Power Platform, for example, tables and model-driven forms, that what they do is they actually kind of merge everything that you have. That means, like, let's say you have an unmanaged layer and you created field B, and then a managed solution that comes after it has like a field C. What's going to happen is that your users are going to see fields B and C at the same time. But again, not all assets are like this. Like Canvas app, if there's something you need to put in your mind is last one wins and unmanaged wins. Okay, same with those.
So what that means, I guess, is you have to really be careful and review what the unmanaged layer is going to be for the workflows and for the apps. Maybe back them out and then bring them back, or
correct. So that's a great segue, because here are the recommendations for customizing the CoE. Number one recommendation is try not to modify the exact component of the CoE. Okay, what does this mean? Try to, if it's an app, just create your unmanaged solution, import the normal CoE app, then use the save as functionality to create a completely separate asset. Okay, so for example, DLP Editor v2, create DLP Editor v2 organization A. So in that way, you're being sure not to really hijack any normal CoE standardized components. Same with flows. Like try to save the flow as a completely different flow if needed, and turn off the original flow from the CoE. So in that way, you'll never overwrite any upgrades that you do. Now, again, be careful with the unmanaged solutions on production environments, especially. If you plan on modifying the CoE extensively for your organization, my recommendation is install the CoE on a development environment, turn off all the flows there, and then do your work. And then export your changes, if they're significant, as a managed solution, and place them on your production environment.
So with something like the CoE, which has many workflows, apps, how would you recommend managing the copying functionality as opposed to going one by one? Is there a simpler way to say, kind of almost create a replica?
Well, like in practice, it sounds a little. It does sound a little hard to just do one by one. What you could do is, if you wanted a complete unmanaged version of the CoE, what you could do is go to GitHub, and our excellent PowerCat team, that really I cannot praise them enough, really have left the CoE as an open source solution. Mm-hmm. What does that mean? That all the code for the CoE is available to every organization that wants to use it. So you can go to GitHub, download the solution and as an unmanaged solution, and then just put it in your development environments, if that's what you need to do. So awesome. Now, okay, so we've talked a lot about the how to. So now let's see a little bit in a graphical way, like what kind of things you have available to you with the CoE. Number one is, and this is one of the key modules, let's say, are the core components. So Haniel and I already showed you a couple of things, like the command center, flow, app permissions, DLP editor. We did not show you the environment request, but basically it's a functionality that allows you to, or allows your users to request new Power Platform environments. And we have the admin part of it, where you can see all those requests and you can reject them, or if you approve them, that environment would be created for them with DLP policies, by the way. Yeah. And then we have the governance components, and that is a way to review, like, okay, so we need to set up, like, is an app compliant or not? There are certain variables or certain customizations where you can indicate what a compliant app is. For example, number of people that they've been shared with, number of times they've been run. Like if you have like a very high volume running application, maybe you want to have more information around it. So governance will manage that. And also like cleanups, like there's certain alerting and cleanups that are going on in the governance modules as well. Now, the other components that we also talked about and Haniel touched upon are the nurture components, and where you empower your users. It's not just like your makers. Okay, we have certain components for for example, request a power or a flow, really. So you can actually, this is something that if you don't have already a mechanism for users to request certain solutions, you can adopt this. Also, the training in a day component is, well, if you don't have an LMS already available and you would like to have like a little lab already made for you to just put out certain trainings for your users, you can use it. Also, and the Video Hub, I like it a lot because you can actually create curate certain content for your users and very easily publish it and have them consume it. So in this case, it can be videos, but you can very easily extend it to have like other type of resources, like learn articles on the web. And very quickly, the innovation and theming apps. Well, we don't need to touch upon them because we've mentioned the innovation backlog and the theme gallery. Oh, and the component gallery as well. So we know what we have. Now, I would like to give you a little bit of an idea of where you can actually plug in your changes into the CoE. And this is, of course, not an exhaustive diagram. It's just to give you a little bit of an idea of the inner workings of the CoE. For example, we were talking about how that the CoE really takes that inventory, like every so often, and really puts all the information into Dataverse. So this is how it does it. Like there is like the admin sync template, V3, which is a scheduled flow that extracts information about the environment.
Need some Tylenol. Such a bad headache.
I think someone is on mute. Now, once there are changes on the Dataverse environments table that we have, that kind of cascade triggers like a lot of other flows that start to get information, like flows, what flows are on the environments, the apps, AI models, etc. Same thing with, for example, for DLP. As you can see here, like when there's like a DLP policy that is changed or created, it also cascades into other flows related to DLP that extract that information.
And I believe there's also a number of workflows in the CoE, but they're only run one time when you're setting it up, and they do more of a cleanup. So those are ones that you don't have to be as concerned with.
Yes. Now there's also like the cleanup flows, right? That when an app is suddenly non-compliant or you want to quarantine an app, those flows really just run when those changes are
right. Just to keep everything nicely organized.
Exactly. Okay, awesome. So now it's like demo time.
Let's hope the gods are on our side today.
So glad you mentioned it because to be honest with everyone, I made those changes. I would have loved to make those changes online as we go, but I didn't want anything to happen. So I made the changes already. So I will just explain step by step.
Sure.
What I've done.
So what's the actual business functionality that you're trying to address right now in the change?
Right. So the first thing that I want to show you is the solution that you have here, like the managed solution of the CoE. Mm-hmm. I've created a unmanaged version of it. Okay. Which is called, like in this case, the Minnesota Research Group demo. All right. Now, for your first demo, what I want to show you is a very simplified thing, but could be nice. And that is what would happen if I would like to modify a flow from the core components. Now, in this case, I've selected the apps flow. Now, the apps flow, what this flow does is when there's any changes on environments, it goes to the environments and reads all the Power Apps that have been created on it. Now, in our case, let's say that in this case, you may think, okay, maybe when someone just created a new app on our tenant, maybe I would like to send them an email, or better yet, send them a Teams message, like maybe, hey, congratulations, you've just created a new app. How can we support you? So this could be a nice way to do it. Like when the app detects a new app that has been created, it sends the message. So let's see what I did here. I will start. Let's see. So while this is opening up, I would like to also start to say, I know that there's a lot of information that we've covered, but maybe start to think, and maybe if you want some inspiration about things that have been done with the CoE, talk to your peers, talk to maybe write on the chat if you've already done some modifications, and really share with the community what you've done, because really the Power Platform community is amazing, and there's many ways to really get support on your Power Platform journey. So perfect. So here you can see I just opened the flow. I went into the section that actually detects, okay, this app is new, it's not on the system. So let's add it. And here, this is the action that I added. Very simple thing. I just, after the app is inserted into Dataverse, I just add a little message saying, "Yeah, congratulations, you've started you're off on your journey." So let's have here. So, okay, now in the meantime, I'll explain that. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to do a little trick to actually trigger the flows. Well, see, and that is to I'm going to go to the environments table within Dataverse, and I'm going to trigger I'll do a little trap. Change. Okay.
So that's basically telling the system that something has changed in the environment.
Exactly. And what's going to happen is that hopefully my flow is going to trigger. So Teams. Teams. Tab. Flow as well. So these are not this is not exactly the messages. Our message has a little bit more information on it. So let's hopefully it won't take, it's not going to take long.
Should be done very soon.
Yeah, it takes about a minute or more seconds.
So while it's doing that, so this particular example you're showing, you're just taking an existing flow or from the CoE, and without changing any sort of data structure or anything, you're just modifying a workflow to perform another action.
That's it. That's it. Like there's very interesting things that you can actually do, like that are more complex than that. But yeah, you just have to figure like the use case that you need.
So what would be the typical process? Let's say that if you wanted to capture additional information, let's say from the Power Platform or store information, what are some of the steps you'd kind of go through? Like, where do you start? Do you start with the workflows? Do you start in Dataverse? What would be kind of the process?
So definitely what I would recommend is always start with the data. Like always start with the information that you really need, and then figure out where that information is best obtained from. Because there could be certain instances where you actually need more information from the user. So you need like a mechanism to extract the data. Like it can be a bot, it can be a card that you create for Teams, or maybe within like an Outlook email, like. Or in other instances, if it's more complicated, maybe you create your own app, or you extend one of the apps from the CoE to capture that data.
Right. Okay.
So let's we'll refresh. And of course, still run. So maybe while this is going on, in the interest of not on using the time, let's start with the other demo. And that is, let me share. When we have the, there's an app that we had seen called Maker Assessment. So the Maker Assessment is an app that lets your users request for a new solution in Power Platform. Now, let's say need a travel app. And for what team? Let's say finance. So we can, when we hit start, what's going to happen is that the Maker Assessment is going to ask us certain questions. Okay, like for example, do you need to have an interface for this application? You can customize. It can be a generic interface, or yes, it has to be perfect, pixel perfect. Okay. Now, if we select another one, like we can see like a few checkboxes that say requires premium, etc., or requires AI. So this is the reason for this is that maybe we need to understand and let the users understand, like, hey, this application that you're asking us to create is going to require licenses. So now, please ignore this one. This is what I just added. It generally when you just install this solution, it only has these first 6 options. And this is like the use case that I was thinking about. Like, okay, so maybe the solutions that you're creating will now have like a chatbot component. So maybe I would like to indicate to the client that or the end user that, hey, now your application is going to need a chatbot. So how do you do that? I'll just it's finished. I'll trigger it in a minute. Now, the first thing you do is just as you mentioned, Haniel, where do you start when you need something new? Generally, the answer is the data. And for example, here, in order to have those options for like the chatbot, the first thing you need to do is you need to create a new column. So here, that is required chatbot. So this I just created. And you can see on my unmanaged solution here that I added the table, the Dataverse table as well.
Yeah.
Okay. So the moment that I do that, I can go into the app, into the administration app, and I can now, through code, add the required chatbot option. So you can see here, like in my virtual agents one, I selected this, but now what I want to do is, like, I want to go here, and I already toggled the required chatbot to yes. So the last step is that, hey, I can go to my Power App. This is a Canvas app. I went into the code and just modified it so that I could add the required chatbot option. And now that if I select none at all, nothing happens. But if I select preferably, you can now see that requires chatbot is started.
Nice.
And we can do a submit, and we'll have that information. So I will just do one more try here. Try to modify again the environment. Yeah, okay. So let's do one more try.
So it looks like unless you're doing a huge overhaul, just adding a few data points or functionality is pretty straightforward and doesn't take a lot of time.
That's correct. Like changes can be as small as you want or as big as you want. Really. And again, you don't have to. Okay, so now it's running again. Fingers crossed.
The demo got not very chatty today.
Yeah. Well, in the meantime, maybe I can. I see that it's amazing that we have like a lot of participation here. We definitely will.
Yeah, we'll have some time at the end. We'll get to the questions probably in about 10 minutes or so.
Okay, now the last thing, let's go to the third part of the demo in the meantime, while that continues to run. So I had mentioned the GitHub page for the CoE, and this is a very interesting place where you can actually, first of all, know what kind of changes are going on with the CoE. Our amazing team really tries to place new changes to the CoE almost every single month. But it can also be a little bit overwhelming to say, okay, so they make changes every single month. When should I actually upgrade the CoE? I think that was one of the topics. Well, there's two answers to that. Number one is you don't need to upgrade the CoE every single month. Just upgrade it if, number one, you experience a bug that you would like to get fixed. And number two, generally, if it's been like 4 or 5 months since you last upgraded your CoE kit, we do recommend that you upgrade it, just because there's always new features coming out.
Right.
So that you don't really mess up. Now, how do you do you know like what happened? If you go to the latest released option on GitHub, it's right around here. You can go and see what changes have happened. Now you might say, okay, so I know all of this has changed, but like, is there a way for me to know like the files or like does these changes affect my modifications? So we have the compare feature here that may help you on that. It's not the perfect thing, but it's a start that you can use. And from here, what you can do is you can do a compare from the current branch with the branch that you are using. For example, let's say that I last updated in October. So what happens here is that I can see if I really want to go deep to see the changes, I can go here, or I can just check the files. Now it is a little bit of a handful to when you're reading this, of course. But for example, if you have been working with the nurture components, you can just do a very easy nurture search. And then you can see, oh, okay, so they just changed the pipelines. They didn't do much changes on the nurture components. So it can be like kind of like a nice way for you to make sure that if there were changes to assets that you've worked on, that you don't miss them. Now, for the well, yeah, it seems that the demo gods weren't with me today. The change is not here.
Something we can maybe demo next time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
that's something to. But the idea is that like you would get like the message for the would be something. Oh, of course, I know why it didn't happen. So do I have 2 minutes?
Yeah, of course.
So nerves. I triggered it, but I didn't do the most important thing. I didn't create any new apps. Yeah, of course.
Happens to the best of us.
Yeah. Like, yeah, I gotta say, like, so power ups and the CoE, this is proof that it can't read your mind yet. It's close though.
So you can just save it.
Correct.
And do you have to publish it or just saving it enough?
Just saving it is enough, but I am going to publish it because I don't want more surprises. So when I go here, just gonna be ready to drop it. Yeah, save, think, let's publish. That's it. You may see that in 1 second, we should see the appearing. There you go.
Yeah. So now you have to run the workflow again.
Correct.
And so normally what would happen is you wouldn't have to manually make a change to the environment or run the workflow. That would be something that would be triggered nightly as part of the CoE.
Correct. Like it's just that now I wanted to show it to you, so I did it manually.
Yep.
I just made that check for that.
There you go.
There you go.
See?
Yeah. There's always an explanation. So there you go. So yeah, that's it.
Awesome. All right, so let's go back to the slides. So, change the screen again. Okay.
So as I said before, there's a number of links we want to share with you. If you're new to the Power Platform Center of Excellence journey, then we recommend you download it from the Microsoft site. There's great documentation on how to set it up. It does take a bit of time to get comfortable with it. Also, if your organization is new to the Power Platform, or if you're getting into it, you're using it, and you want to establish governance, because again, we are saying that the Center of Excellence is a tool, but you need governance as a whole, and you're not sure quite how the Center of Excellence is how the Power Platform is being used, are people using it? Protiviti provides an assessment, which is essentially call it almost like a canned engagement, where we would be running a number of scripts and partial scripts and automates to collect key information about how the Power Platform is configured, the number of flows, apps, environments, all those things we have to help you guide you and set you on your path towards your improving your Center of Excellence. There's also the link for Microsoft Learn if you want to learn more about the Power Platform in general. And I think now I'm going to switch one more slide, and while I show the slide, I do want to turn my attention to the questions that were posted. So we're just going to go through them from the top. If you want to go off mute to discuss them further, happy to. So the first question was by Brett Olson. Are there common multiplexing scenarios in Power Platform that have been identified and recommendations for remediation? So, Brett, are you asking whether the Power Platform will identify multiplexing for you? Can you maybe elaborate on that?
I guess it's just more that have maybe been observed by organizations that have used them. So nothing done through the tool, but more kind of, I guess, in terms of this talk today, maybe if there's something within the Center of Excellence that you could use in that purpose. But I guess in general, it was more if there's something that's been seen.
So, well, I see it all the time, like the classic one, get a flow that extracts information from Dataverse and places it into SharePoint, and then having the users create a Canvas app that actually has users that access that SharePoint list.
Yeah, that's a very common scenario, whether it's Dataverse or SQL. Organizations are not sometimes understanding what the meaning of multiplexing is, and just because they can do something technically doesn't mean that they're allowed to do it, right? So ultimately, if you're automating an entire process, if at any point there's any premium connectors or premium functionality, the users must be properly licensed. If there is a break in the automation, so whether there's some manual task that requires, let's say, copying something manual into Dataverse, that is not multiplexing because you're not automating it. The best thing you can probably do is look at the combination of connectors. That might be one hint whether multiplexing may be happening. For example, if you were using just, let's say, Outlook and SharePoint, there really is no multiplexing happening unless, because you're just using those connectors. Now, the other aspect of it is if you're running any batch jobs, even if it's standard connectors, if you're running anything batch for the entire department organization, you have to have a Power Automate per flow license because that's what the license requires for you. But again, it's not something that the CoE will tell you.
Yeah, correct.
Next question. I can't read that, but
yeah, it's basically why doesn't Microsoft add all that functionality into the out-of-the-box Power Platform? That's a great question, and the answer is managed environments. So managed environments is like when the CoE was created, it was meant to be a tool that kind of like filled the certain gaps that we had on Power Platform that would be very time consuming to really integrate it in a short period of time. I mean, it's grown to be a lot more than that, as you've seen, but that was the idea from the beginning. And also the intention is to start getting as many functionalities that are really required. For example, the ALM application lifecycle management for solutions. That is a vital component for Power Platform, and that is being integrated into managed environments probably within this year. So what some of the main functionalities of the ALM Accelerator are being integrated, and there's other functionalities that are being integrated into managed environments. So to answer your question, Kirk, yeah, like there's like a team that is really actively working on it, and eventually, like a lot of the functionalities that you see today may be included into managed environments, and then the CoE will include new features, right? So,
next question is by Chris. Is there a chart or report that will show a count of users for each of the connectors? I don't believe there's one out of the box, but this is a great enhancement that that you could build into it, right? Because you already have the list of connectors that is being managed inside of Dataverse as part of the CoE. So what you could do is then just either build your own workflow or expand an existing workflow to check against all the different Power Apps and Power Automate workflows and even Power BI dashboards that are using a connector to see how many are being used and then enter the data into Dataverse. Maybe this is something we can show as an example in the future.
Yeah, we need to make a note of that.
So, yeah.
Can you quarantine both Canvas apps and model-driven apps? So in fear of being wrong, I believe that it's only Canvas apps right now, Jeff, but maybe shoot me an email and I will investigate it for you.
Yeah.
And if you upgrade, oh, sorry, and there was one thing that from Kirk that he mentioned about best practices. Kirk, we understand that, we understand the pain, and flows will be able to use service principles, which is like the best security practice right now. They will be able to be used as flow owners. And there's certain connectors like Dataverse that already allow you to connect using a service principle, but it will be more general. And that is in private preview currently, but yeah, it's coming. So the next one.
So if you can upgrade a particular component of CoE, single flow, Canvas app, etc., using the save as process, are you foregoing future CoE upgrades of the component? Would you have to re-implement your customizations on the new CoE?
Yeah.
Right. So I think this is what you were saying before, Mauricio, that if it's something that is based on the Dataverse component, the model-driven app with the tables, once you upgrade, the unmanaged layer will go on top of the latest managed layer. It's more about the flows and the Canvas apps. So I think the practice is to basically take a backup of those, upgrade the CoE, so remove the unmanaged layer of those elements, upgrade the CoE, and then reapply them.
Yeah, correctly. So unfortunately, there's no like silver bullet in this, as Haniel mentioned. That's why I recommend also going to GitHub and seeing the code that changed, because that will help you really identify what changes took place. And maybe what you want to do is like just copy paste those changes into your implementation.
Yeah.
But yeah, for now, that's it.
Yeah. And then the last one was a question around the Power Apps. Can you see who's running a Power App and where? And so in terms of the where, so in this particular case, all of us are, or most of us are running from the Chicago office. But you can see who is building the apps, and there's actual, I believe there is information here about app usage. Here we go, app usage. Sure why it's not showing that specific piece.
Yeah, but you actually can't see.
No, there's
no data. But
yeah, this one doesn't have any data. But the short answer is yes, we do know about the makers. Just like we know about the makers, we can find out the moment somebody's logging in, we know where they're located. We can track that information, and you could display that information in the app.
Yeah. So speaking about even like information about like who has launched which app, I believe that you can actually connect that you can connect the Microsoft 365 logging into the CoE to extract the data as well.
Yeah.
It's like it's an extra step, but yes. Now, in order to any user to be able to use an app assessment, will they need the upgraded Power Apps license? Yes, because it uses Dataverse.
Right.
So. The only one using app assessment, they will also need access to an environment where the starter kit is deployed. Yes, for now there you do, but from what I believe heard yesterday, it seems that there's going to be one point where your users you don't need to enable those users in the user group of that environment to be able to access apps there. I guess more any components that end users makers can interact with them.
Not really.
No.
Everything is so the only thing is with E3 maybe not, but with the basic E5, unless you have E3 with the premium Power BI licenses, they could use the dashboard, the Power BI dashboard. That is something they can view. But anything else that they would need, most of the apps, actually all of the apps are driven based on that Dataverse model, which is a premium connector.
Yeah. Yeah, the moment that you have like Dataverse or really a data source that is other than SharePoint,
yeah,
it's a good way to know, hey, that's a premium connector.
Yeah. And then, okay, I think that is it. I don't know if there's any other last questions. We have about 5 minutes left. So again, first of all, thank you everybody who attended our session. I hope you found this useful. Sharing our contact information again if you want to connect with us and continue the conversation. If there's any other questions left, if you want to just go off mute and we can discuss.
Yeah, and again, thank you, Haniel and Mauricio. That was an awesome session. I do want to add in, as at the beginning I promised there would be a winner for a gift card during the session. I have spun the wheel of randomization, and Chris Zelik, hopefully I pronounced the last name right, you are the selected winner. So awesome, and congratulations to that. And then I put in chat as well our survey for the event. Helps to fill that out throughout the day or just have that open in the second browser. And then the only other thing is to announce the next speaker, unless there are any other questions.
Yeah, and thanks again everyone for attending the meeting, and yeah, really share with us your successes with CoE.
Yeah.
Keep it on coming.